morning and welcome to Driving Force Radio, where we seek to discover each and every week what drives today's leaders. On today's show, we have the Center for Teaching International Relations as well as History Colorado with us. And we have three fantastic guests who are really going to frame up the importance of international studies, international relations, and how that sort of frames here in Colorado with our history and with the strength of Colorado here in our region. Our first guest today is Jeannie Ritter, the former First Lady of Colorado. She's done extensive missionary work, has taught, lived abroad, and is really active in her community on several boards as well as in the mental health community. We also have with us today Ed Nichols, the President and CEO of History Colorado, and he is one of the State Historic Preservation Officers. And then our third guest is Steve Werner, an international nonprofit consultant and just amazing humanitarian here in the Colorado area. Jeannie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. A great connector, I think, was the word you were looking for.
Great connector.
Great connector, for sure.
Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to
And
be here.
Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Jan.
I want to just come out of the blocks a little bit and frame up what each of you is doing, because I think this collaborative is so unique in and of itself. So Jeannie, give us a little bit about where you're at and what you're doing in these roles with.
You know, I have had great opportunities, of course, and all of those continue to build and culminate in a really timely way with what we're looking at in terms of our space in Colorado, as you said, Jan, and then also how that relates to what's going on across our nation and rippling across the world. And so, how I've been informed in my own journey and our journey, Bill and I, even through our children, I think, watching kids these days, we got what we wished for in terms of a global world, and kids, being able to live in a really globally informed way and move in that way.
Absolutely. And Ed, I want you to tell us a little bit about History Colorado. I know that so many people only see it as a museum downtown, and I think it's so much larger than that. Can you talk about that for a minute?
We do have the new museum. History Colorado is a new name. It's a rebranding of the Colorado Historical Society. We're actually 133 years old, but most people identify, or many people identify us now with the new facility downtown and think of that as the museum, but we do include so much more: the Office of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, the research library, the Stephen Hart Research Library of Colorado, the artifact collection for the state, 130-year-old collection of state artifacts dating back to the Weatherall collections of Mesa Verde, pottery and all the artifacts from that era, as well as 10 other museum sites across the state. So
wow.
We are a much larger organization than just that one building.
Wow, wow. And Steve, talk about the Center for Teaching International Relations, and it's CTIR for short, so
yes.
Listeners know, but talk a little bit about CTIR, because I think this is one of those amazing nonprofits that only people in the international relations field even know exists.
Yes. The reality is we've not done a very good job of telling our story, but we have a long history here in Colorado. We are about 40 years old. We were started by Dr. Corbell, who the Corbell School of International Studies is named for at the University of Denver. For many years we were housed at the University of Denver, and we saw the need to develop more collaborations and partnerships with organizations like History Colorado, other universities. So we became our own nonprofit organization 2 years ago. And we found that it's challenging when you have a long history and people feel that you've been well supported to now have to go out and become our own nonprofit organization. But our board is very passionate about the need for our youth to be more knowledgeable about world events, other countries, other cultures, and how the world is increasingly shrinking all the time. And I appreciate the timing of being here today, since the third presidential debate is going to focus on foreign affairs. And I think that a lot of Americans are very curious about what's our role. But the state of Colorado, as just one state in the union, is very involved internationally. There's so many Coloradans who do volunteer work or they work internationally and they do it from Denver, that I think it's very important for our youth to understand that the world is increasingly shrinking and that they can learn about new ways of doing work, establishing relationships, and that's essentially what our mission's all about.
Well, and Steve, talk about how you guys do that. I know it's more with youth. It's not necessarily adults to adults, but it's really training that next round of leadership, if I understand it correctly, to really truly embrace and engage in a global community. And then I want you guys to chime in about the importance of that. But Steve, talk about that and the engagement of youth.
What I would call our flagship project has been the World Affairs Challenge, where teams of middle school and high school students come to present on a current world event. And then people like me and Ed and Jeannie and you are judges to sit and watch their presentation. We use a organized way to make sure that we're trying to judge this as fairly as possible. But what happens is that the students learn a lot. We have mentors from the community, people that work internationally through their business or through their volunteer work, who will sit down with the student teams and talk about what they do. And they'll help the teams to develop a very effective presentation. The teams also have to do a lot of research. So they're judged on their content, their ability to present, how well they've worked together, teamwork, things like that. And it's just very exciting to see the youth embrace this. And we've seen so many students that their lives have turned around. So, and that's a big...
a word I want to make sure we put in here is curiosity, Jan, that it's this great way of picking up on an existing world that these young people live in, which, as we were saying earlier, you know, there's something upwards of 80-some languages spoken just within the Denver public school system. You know, we have folks from all over, and this is a way to capitalize on that and really maximize a level of curiosity and see how they think about problems globally, create skits in innovative ways to talk about possible solutions. And as a public school teacher for 10 years, it's really valuable to have something like the Center for International Relations, Teaching International Relations, be a support for staff. It remains within our standards, within the rubrics that we want to get across for middle schools and high schools, but it really helps extend that format and really create a backup and a better, a meatier program for getting kids to think.
And Jeannie, when you talk about curiosity, I think it's fascinating because as we look, we're an educational institution.
Right.
And a great deal of all of our program is oriented around teaching children about the past so they know who they are. You need to know who you were in order to know who you are. And that curiosity that you speak about on an international and global basis is also there on a temporal basis. Who are your ancestors? How did we come to be who we are today? And we have programs that deal in bringing students into the museum to teach and show through exhibits, sending teachers out and training, teacher training, all to satisfy that curiosity, to ignite an interest in their own history so that they begin to understand better who they are, and again, the curiosity of their background so they can make these decisions about the future, understanding more of exactly how they got to where they are.
Well, and Ed, I want to pick up on that idea. You know, at History Colorado, you guys have so many educational services, and just like you said, it is about knowing where you came from that helps guide where you go. And oftentimes, I think we lose that in the rhetoric that's going on now in our political cycle. And we sort of forget that there are millions of people without clean water. There are political instabilities all over the world. There are things going on even in our own neighborhoods that are key to this global conversation. And I know History Colorado really has some of these educational services that can address some of these things. Can you talk about that?
Well, and Jeannie, you talk about the number of languages spoken and understanding what Colorado is in terms of today has to go backwards. You have to understand who are the people who settled here, who are the people who migrated here, who are those people and what decisions were made about Colorado's future, so that these people that are here today understand more of that. We have programs that are national programs like History Day, where you compete across the country. You have programs in school and in our facility where classrooms come in and we take them through history lessons, lectures, as well as teacher training. But they can come in and they can experience through the exhibits, they can experience the history of Colorado and get them excited about learning more about their past, just as you do about learning more about the international relationships of what goes on in the world today. We look at it from a point of view of who you are on the continuum of Colorado and its people.
Yes. Well, and Jeannie, I know this is huge for you in the work that you do in the community with PBS as well as the other things that you do. Talk a little bit about the importance of this engagement in our own local communities and how that sort of really drives this importance to our state as well as our region.
Gosh, you know, so I have the opportunity to continue my advocacy work around behavioral health and mental health here in the metro area, as well as outreaching to the state. But you know, that intersects with, of course, our immigrant populations coming in, how we actually integrate folks that are coming in to our schools, how we meet the needs and make sure that this, you know, there's a great national story a couple weeks ago on the city of Aurora and just the richness of restaurants and foods and businesses there. And so how do we maximize those things and make sure that we have understandings and a little, just even a little bit of background around some of these sectors, so that we maximize those relationships and the potential that those businesses and partnerships, as Steve said, that we can, you know, really help things to reach the potential that they have. You know, it's great to excite and ignite, you know, as Ed said, a population, but we really don't want to leave out kind of where we're going with this,
right,
and the impact it has on when sometimes we talk about foreign policy and we like to think of that as kind of a governmental. No, these are real, these issues have big economic impacts on our communities and our nation, of course, but making sure that we know how to move in the world, in a world where we are appropriate, where we have an understanding, things that might not come natural to us, we have to implement tools to help us learn those things so that we are appropriate in the world.
And learning those things can be in so many different forms. Right. Collaborations, for example, between History Colorado and CTIR, talking about how who you are in terms of your past and your future. You're talking about who we are in terms of a state and a national and global economy.
Exactly.
And we're talking about doing things together in collaboration, moving forward so that these lessons that you speak of are shared. And at this point in time, there are so many needs and so many opportunities for this sort of thing that partnerships, I think, are a very important part of it.
And Steve, Ed, that's a great point. And Steve, I know you guys are all collaborating on some work with CTIR to really drive this conversation forward.
Exactly.
And I think it's so interesting because I work with a bunch of fourth graders because my daughter's in fourth grade, and their idea of foreign issues or international relations is, you know, something going on in Texas. I mean, their idea has their vision hasn't gone past the borders of our country yet. And so talk about some of the collaborations that you're doing with CTR and what you're driving to with students here in Colorado.
Sure. Well, one example is that the World Affairs Challenge that I had referenced earlier is going to be held at Regis University this next April 13th. We usually hold it in the springtime. And so Regis has been great to step up and provide space, but more importantly, we're looking to link up business persons that can go into classrooms and talk about the work that they do and how a better understanding of the world has led to their career path. We're looking for graduate students from different universities to do internships with us and also help teams to decide on their presentation what they want to focus on, because the teams can focus on global health issues, they can focus on economic issues such as how microfinance works and how that benefits communities around the world. They can talk about international events and relationships between countries. They can talk about the new economy, renewable energy, and how a state like Colorado is working closely with a number of other countries on their renewable energy programs. So the students get some broad guidelines, but then it's up to them to decide how they're going to present this. And we have so many people from the business world, from universities, that go in and help the students quite a bit.
I love that.
Can I make sure we give a shout out to our Rotary in Colorado?
Oh, they've done a great job.
Amazing, and especially you listen currently to polio and how close we are to eradicating polio around the world, and what the barriers are. I believe it's Nigeria where there's still this big issue.
Right.
But to really see the impact that local community Rotaries have had on an issue like that.
Well, really polio is one, water is another. International collaboration to help solve some of the world water problems.
Right.
Again, Rotary is a big participant.
Amazing, connecting, that goes back to your whole collaborative piece, how do we take, actually, I believe Colorado hosts one of the largest return Peace Corps volunteer populations, proud to say it. But those folks, that's not an isolated time in their lives. They come back and that passion continues. They take the places they work, the organizations that they affiliate with, and Rotary's one of them. Big initiative out of our Colorado State University on wood burning stoves and how to shift away from deforestation in many, many countries around the world, and helping folks to create a new way to cook instead of taking trees down and walking further and further and further.
Well, and it's not just about the trees, it's also about the health of young women and girls who are the ones they're cooking. And I mean, it's
started now here.
Such a huge paradigm shift. We'll have to, that's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother show.
Well, it's interesting as you talk about these collaborations because they take so many different forms.
Right.
One of the
and this is a unique one, Ed. So
well,
talk
and
about
this is a very interesting point because one of the tenets we have is looking at our facility as a place to host civic conversations, civic conversations. Recently, well, the night of the presidential debate, we were partnering with Rocky Mountain PBS, and we shared that feed and had an audience in our facility and a panel discussion afterward about that. But in support of that, for students, all that leading up to that, we had what we called President Palooza. It was a whole series of different events talking about the presidential election, but talking about past presidents. We had visits from Lincoln and Jefferson. President Jefferson walked into our board meeting. That surprised a few people. But it was these types of events, and then lectures and conversations talking about who we are as a people. And again, looking at the international relationship of where we fit in this globe, who we are in time, where we're going in the future. All these different types of interactions. We aren't just a static society, and we can't believe that we are.
Well, and Ed, that brings me to this point. I know that there are so many pieces of technology that you all have leveraged to really reach farther into the community, and not just a one-on-one person conversation, but that you've taken this technology approach to really reach out and collaborate differently. Can you talk about some of those things?
Technology is a very important part of what we've done. Creating this new facility is really, it's been a gift, and the opportunity to create new ways to demonstrate our history. We have exhibits where people can climb into a Model T and seeing a movie can experience Eastern Colorado and what it was like to drive and live in a Model T back 60 years ago. Or looking at the map. During the Ritter administration, when we were authorized, one of the things that happened is that 1% of our building funding goes into art and public places. We created a beautiful map of Colorado in the atrium floor. But that's been turned by technology into a teaching tool. So we now have what we call a time machine. You can move it over the map, and as it passes over key areas where stories are told, the stories can be brought up on display screens on this steampunk-looking device. And it's really fascinating because technology is allowing us to take that relationship of the space and the time and turn it into stories for kids.
You know, such great example of leadership around that. And like I said earlier, I have the privilege of sitting on the Rocky Mountain PBS board, and so the same thing, being informed by technology, and and we can't sit here. No offense, guys, all of us in gray. We can't sit here and make up what the next generation will kind of ratchet up beyond what we're doing now. But taking that whole opportunity with what we're saying, the connectivity, creating the context within which to think about these things, like they did at History Colorado, and then just, boy, it's infinite, the scale that we can take this
Just
with
trying to
by
understand how
incorporating-
they're going to communicate.
Yes.
How many of us foresaw the internet and social media even a decade ago?
I know.
It's been so different. and
It's so
changed.
different. And I
Exactly.
remember the Ditto machine. Remember that?
No,
With
listen, don't-
you know, and
Don't
so
get
it's
me
come
back to the
so
mimeograph machine.
far, so far.
The things that Jeannie and Ed have just talked about, though, are, I think, the real goal of CTIR in the long run, the passion that all of us involved have, is to help our youth become lifelong learners. And we have found that the entry point a lot of times is learning about other countries that they have never been exposed to. But we have many examples of students that then will go to History Colorado, or they'll go to other institutions in our state and continue their studies. And that's what I think we're all really passionate about. Not sure if we're impacting the students or the students are impacting us.
I hope
but
it's both.
I
yes,
think it's
yeah.
both.
And it
But-
is contagious, Steve.
It is, and we've had so many great examples. I'll just tell you one if you don't mind, but we had a team from Rifle, Colorado come, and the teacher that brought the students said that all of the students were not performing where they should and were in danger of not even finishing high school. When they came and made a presentation, they were very unsure of themselves. They were not very confident in going into the competition, but the teacher is a really great teacher who now happens to be on our board, but she really encouraged the students. And so what ended up happening is they won. And the confidence that they gained from winning the World Affairs Challenge that year led to half of that team going on to college. Not only, they all finished high school, half of the team went on to college. And the amazing thing for me, well, two amazing things, was that their focus that year was about world hunger. And they said, well, we can't necessarily cure world hunger from Rifle, but we can do something about hunger in our community. And they organized a citywide food gathering campaign through their high school to benefit their local food bank. So they took what they learned and put it into practical use. And the second thing is that the half of the team that did not go to college did fundraising in the community and raised scholarship money for the team's members that did go to college.
That's the part I think is so amazing.
Yeah.
It's become this very collaborative thing over at CTIR, and those kids are so connected to each other, whether it's from before or they're just coming up the
Meaning
chain. And
connected to each other.
Yes,
And
the
connected to
excitement
each
that
other,
they
and it's
gain out
great.
of that. We just had a conference across the country. We're a Smithsonian affiliate, and in collaboration with the Smithsonian, they put on a program about the Dust Bowl, and in collaboration with Ken Burns and his new book coming out about the Dust Bowl, and he was part of the conference. These kids from Colorado were able to talk to Ken Burns about
amazing.
and learn more about the Dust Bowl, something that it was man-made. It was caused by our own farming practices, and yet that's not known. And the excitement that these kids learned from that and got from that experience was amazing.
So Ed, what's next at the History Colorado, and where should we be paying attention? How can people learn more?
We're doing things all around the state, but here in Denver at the History Colorado Center, we're going to be opening a new phase in 2013, another in 2014 and 2015. So stay tuned. There'll be lots of openings. We're opening the new Denver A to Z, which is a whimsical look at Denver in the next 30 days. That's every letter of the alphabet has something associated with it around Denver. And then next year we'll be opening an exhibit called Living West, which is man and nature's interaction in Colorado, the story of water again. How does water affect, and how did it affect the history of the people in Colorado, and what are the issues going forward with that? So we'll have that opening in 2013, and 2014, 15 will be additional exhibits going forward.
Jeannie, what's next for you?
Oh gosh, great stuff going on. Happy to be involved in the November 12th event with CTIR, but really taking advantage of a great opportunity to continue my work changing the community norm around behavioral health, and you know how that impacts everything.
Yeah. And Steve, tell us what's next for CTIR.
Well, the next big project is the event that we're having on November 12th. We're calling it a friend-raiser. We're very thankful that History Colorado will provide the venue, and we can't thank them enough. And looking forward to the collaboration that we have with History Colorado and Colorado leaders. Both Ed and Jeannie have agreed to be some of the speakers that night and talk about why they think that our mission is very important. And we have other people also from the business community talking about how some of our programs have led to their employees getting coming to them because they've developed a passion about learning about the world. So, and I think the really fun part of the night, not to downplay Ed and Jeannie's role, is that we're going to have some students talk about their involvement and how it made a difference in their lives.
That sounds great. So November 12th, go to ctir.org to learn more about the November Friendathon?
Yes.
What was it?
We're calling it a
Friend-raiser. And to learn about the World Affairs Challenge on April 13th, go to worldaffairschallenge.org. And to learn more about the stuff that's going on at History Colorado, so many things coming up in the next 2 years, go to historycolorado.org. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Driving Force Radio. In this segment, we have another amazing organization. This is FreshWater Malawi and FreshWater Project International. And we have two amazing guests with us. We have the Executive Director of FreshWater Malawi, Charles Banda, with us. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Welcome.
And Heidi Rickles, the co-founder of FreshWater Project International, based here in Colorado. Yes, Heidi?
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Heidi.
Thank you.
Charles, you've grown up in Malawi and in rural villages, and you have such an amazing history. I have to ask you, what got you started with FreshWater Malawi? How did you say, I've got to do this?
That's an interesting question. I think it's important for you to know that I am a three-in-one guy. I am a fireman, preacher, and a waterman now.
I like that.
As a preacher, I used to organize meetings, evangelistic meetings in the rural areas. Now, within the course of evangelism meetings, it just happened that most of the meetings that we were organizing, after spending all the resources for the meeting, were being cancelled just because there were cholera outbreaks in the villages.
Mm-hmm.
Then I decided to shift my focus from preaching and integrate it with the water and sanitation program.
Okay. So what made you say, I've got to go with water? Why freshwater and sanitation for Malawi?
If you can go back to the statistics of our country, you will find that 46% of our communities have no access to sanitation facilities.
60%.
46%.
46%.
Then 82% now, no access to safe water alone.
Wow.
So you can imagine we are in a critical situation here where it requires somebody who is committed, who has the passion to intervene. Hence, my shift on the focus.
Got it. So Heidi, you participated in our co-founder FreshWater Project International. What is that organization doing in conjunction with Charles's organization?
Well, I first met Charles in 2004. I was working at Project Cure, another local international humanitarian organization, and I got a phone call saying we have 4 water professionals that we've brought over for a 4-month fellowship. One gentleman is from Malawi. Part of that fellowship is that they need to learn a particular skill and do kind of an internship. And for Charles, he wanted to learn more about marketing, and that was my role. And so I was asked to be his marketing mentor at Project Cure. And we spent 4 months together talking about the basics of marketing and outreach and fundraising. And at the same time, Charles taught me and mentored me about the need for water in many developing countries, but also specifically in Malawi. We stayed friends for several years, and just over email, back and forth, I learned that he had had a documentary film made about his work called Water First, Reaching the Millennium Development Goals. And when I found that out, I said, how can I get involved? What a great tool to communicate to other people what the needs are. And so I partnered up with Amy Hart, who's the film's director. She lives in New York City. And together we began organizing screenings of the film and just supporting Charles on our own, on the side. Through that, it became really apparent that we needed to form a US-based 501c3 so that people who saw the film, wanted to get involved, would basically be able to get a tax deduction for their contributions. We had many people who really wanted to contribute to a water project. And so we formed FreshWater Project International. We're official 501c3, and that launched in February of this year.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's really just, it's the U.S. side of the FreshWater Malawi work.
Yes.
So that people that are really motivated by the conversation that Charles has created and the work that Charles is doing in Malawi can then contribute and become active in the work that he's doing. Yes,
yes.
Heidi?
Our focus is entirely on awareness raising and fundraising, and then we direct those funds straight to FreshWater Malawi, and they are our implementing partner in Malawi.
So Charles, you talked about some of the statistics. I mean, they're staggering in Malawi about the need for water and sanitation services. Tell listeners more about that. Describe what the system looks like right now and what the ultimate goal looks like.
Yeah, FreshWater Project as a local non-governmental organization, which was initiated in 1995 with me as a founder, has a special strategy, very unique, because we understand the local issues, the community dynamics. Now we have a strategy which starts with need assessment. After the need assessment is verified, then we form a water point committee or a sanitation committee. And we work with that committees from the beginning of the project to handover.
So talk about what the average community looks like, Charles. You said, I think 46%, I believe it was, don't have access to clean water. And I don't think the average U.S. citizen even understands what that means, because we're so used to just walking in to our kitchen or our bathroom and turning on a water faucet or flushing a toilet. Talk about what some of those dynamics look like in Malawi.
I am talking 46% of our community, Malawian community, have no access to basic sanitation. Wow. They use the bush as a means of defecating. I'm talking of the girl child who sometimes drops from school just because when she goes to school, she is scared that she will be mocked by the young kids when she is peeing in the bush. Yeah. Sometimes they are even chased by the snakes. So you can see the situation is pathetic. I'm talking of the girl child who walks 5 kilometers to get a dirty bucket of water. A woman who is already tired from the garden, she has the baby at the back, a bunch of wood on top. She goes home, she drops all those things plus the baby, and walk 5 kilometers to get that dirty bucket of water for the domestic use.
Sure. So
that's the current situation in Malawi, and we really need, it requires somebody who is committed to respond to that. And FreshWater Project happens to be one of the local organizations that is addressing those problems.
I love that, and I'm glad that you're addressing this need. And Heidi, you talked just a minute ago about the new film that's coming out, Water First, Reaching the Millennium Development Goals. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the work that, what's going on with the film?
Yes, it's actually been out for several years and has won some international awards for its focus. It's a character-based film, the character being Mr. Banda, and it basically ties water issues to all of the Millennium Development Goals. The MDGs were put together by the United Nations, and basically goals related to different development issues that should be achieved by 2015. And many of the nations around the world signed on to those goals, and so it's been a huge focus. And so Water First really shows how water ties into each and every issue, from maternal health to community development to partnerships. And it's just a wonderful way, and Mr. Banda takes the viewers into the communities to see these women and girls who are walking miles and miles every day for dirty water, the health implications of that for children, for communities, the water and sanitation issues, and how that affects maternal health, child health.
All types of health. I know when I was in Africa, I was to play my traditional role while there, and I had to walk for water. I did not enjoy walking for water.
Did you wear it on your head?
Hard work. I tried. And then I ended up just lugging it on my side because I didn't have the talent on my head. But
I'm glad you have a feel.
It's hard work. It's very hard work. And by the third day, I was like, oh, forget it. Well, let's take the car. And so we took the car and put it in the back seat. And then we had a whole day with the girls to do what we needed to do. And I have a great appreciation for how hard it is when you don't have clean sanitation close to where you're staying or where you live. And Charles, that brings me to a question. It seems like so many people are affected by this issue of water, and like Heidi just referenced, it touches every aspect of life. So who's most affected in Malawi by these water issues, and why?
Yeah, from my area explanation, it's clear that this problem of lack of water, it's affecting our dear women in Malawi. It's affecting the girl child in Malawi. For the girl child, the water issue becomes a burden. Before she goes to school, she has to walk a lot of kilometers to get that dirty bucket of water. She brings that water home. She goes to school, she has to collect water for the school again. After classes, she has to come, collect water for the home again. Not only that, the lack of sanitation facilities. Most of our girls, they drop from school due to lack of sanitation facilities. Because of the same problems that I explained earlier on, that they go in the bush and they are scared to be seen by young ones, that they are peeing in the bush. And that comes to one of the other challenges that we are addressing in the Millennium Development Goal film on gender. The water problem in Malawi is for women. Because of our cultural belief, it is a woman who brings water to a home, not men. So it's really becoming a burden to our women. That is why FreshWater is making sure that we bring water closer to a woman. A woman should be able to get the water at the doorstep. Then Malawi will become a happy country.
I appreciate that so much, and I appreciate that you recognize how important it is for women and young girls to engage in their communities as well as the young men in the community. So thank you for that, Charles. So Heidi, what are some of the ways that you guys are supporting the efforts of Charles and the FreshWater team in Malawi through FreshWater International here in the States?
Many ways. The film is a wonderful way for people to really understand and to see what some of the issues are and how water relates to everything from education to health. And so we're trying to organize as many screenings as we can at universities, in the community, with people who have an interest in learning more. So the film is a wonderful way, and we've got some upcoming screenings here in Denver. We've brought Charles over for a 3-week U.S. tour, basically. He's meeting with various businesses. He's meeting with potential partners, other people that are interested in partnering. And so that's been wonderful, really connecting Charles and his organization with people here in the U.S. And then just awareness raising. And fundraising, of course.
Sure. So how do listeners learn more about the film, or where some of the screenings might be here in the Denver area, or if they're outside of the Denver area, how do they get connected to find screenings or get screenings in their communities?
The film can be purchased. It's waterfirstfilm.org is the website for that. For the local screenings that we're organizing, you can go to freshwaterintl.org.
Okay.
So that's short for international, but it's freshwaterintl.org. Go to the events page, the upcoming events, and we have a list of those events.
Okay. So Charles, I want to come back to something you said. You said that there's really a very specific process that you guys take at FreshWater Malawi to work with communities, and it's just not this throw it at them and we're gonna bring water to you and just do this to you, but there's a very specific process with a needs assessment and committees and things like that. Can you delve deeper into that and what that entails, and how do you assess what communities get water in Malawi and who don't?
Well, I think it's important to know that we are a demand-driven organization. If the communities do not come and ask for water from us, we cannot go. But when they ask, then we go, do the need assessment, form committees. We sign an agreement with the communities, expecting them to contribute in terms of labor, local materials like bricks, sand, and aggregate. Then we do the work from day one up to completion together. After that, then we make sure that they are trained on how to maintain the borehole. And they should be able again to raise funds for that water point so that it's sustained. In the case of breakdown, they would just purchase that spare part and fix it. And we focus much on women because, as I said earlier on, a water issue in Malawi is a woman's issue. So we train 60% of the committee women, so that they are able to maintain the water point. 40% are men. After training, then we hand over the facility to that village. It's no longer for fresh water, it's theirs. They are responsible, they will maintain it, and that assures sustainability.
I love that. So Charles, give listeners a feel for what it looks like. Is it just a water pump, or is it a sanitation area where there's a water pump and potentially a public toilet? What is part of the work that goes into a community?
As a local organization, we are trying to explore ways and means, and we bring in a lot of technology depending on the area that we are implementing the project. We have a hand pump which pumps water direct into the bucket of whoever wants to get the water. But we have another system which we use to pump water using solar panels. It goes up into the tank. From the tank, it comes down under gravity. And it's a good and fantastic program because instead of women wasting their energy, the sun can pump water for those women. Then we have a windmill technology where wind pumps water for our dear women so that at least they save the energy for their other house calls. Yeah, so as a local organization, we bring in a lot of technologies. The facilities, the sanitation facilities that we introduce in the village are different from the facilities that we introduce in schools. In schools, we are doing what we call gender-friendly, environmental-friendly, and ecological sanitation.
And talk about that a little bit. How is that different in the schools? Obviously, then it moves to not just a centralized water system, but it's more of a female and male system where people have different areas. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, the latrines that we are constructing in schools, they have to offer privacy for our dear girls so that they are no longer ashamed. When they get into that toilet, they should be able to assist themselves nicely. If they are in bad shape like menstruation, they should be able to get all the facilities inside the latrines so that as they get out, they are not knowing what was happening inside.
Right. Okay. So Heidi, how is this organization unique from other water NGOs? I mean, we hear a lot about other NGOs that are bringing clean water and sanitation, and this seems like this has a little bit of a unique bent to it. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, there are many wonderful international water NGOs here in Denver and around the world that are doing some fabulous things. The way we like to say that we're different, we're providing less of a sprinkler effect and more of a hose. We're working only in Malawi. Our focus is on one country until everyone in that country has access to water and sanitation at the household level. So rather than working and having impact in a lot of different countries, we're trying to have a big impact in one. And that's doable. That's feasible for us. The other way, I think, is that we're really relying on the expertise, the cultural expertise, and the technical expertise of our implementing partner. So we're not going into a community pretending that we have the answers. Right. Charles is Malawian. FreshWater Malawi is run by Malawians. They understand the communities. They understand what their needs are. They understand community-driven development.
And their culture.
And their culture.
Yeah.
And they've been doing it since 1995.
Yeah.
So we're not here to tell Charles what to do. We're here to support him and to help his efforts and to spread the word. My passion is to connect people. I live here in Denver, but really people all over the United States, connect people who don't know what it's like in developing nations. They don't, like you said, they might take for granted that they have clean water, that they have facilities, and I want to connect those two. I've been so inspired by what I've learned about water and what's being done by committed and passionate people like Mr. Banda, and I want other people to also learn about that, be inspired, and see that they can make a difference as well, and together we can make the world a better place.
I love that. I love that, Heidi. And that's so much one of those underlying foundations of ICOSA. It's really about bringing those resources to bear and connecting the right people and collaborating with the right organizations and really truly trying to make a difference, move the needle forward, if you will, in communities. And Charles, I know you have a huge commitment to maternal child health, and there's something called the waiting shelter concept for providing hygiene training services to expectant mothers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, the waiting shelters have been integrated into our water program. Why? We have seen pathetic situations for our dear women. Before, we used to have what we call traditional birth attendants. But our current health policy now does not allow traditional birth attendants to perform delivery activities.
So these are midwives,
right?
Who may be trained or may not be trained in the communities. Many of these communities are very rural, and women who are pregnant are far away from health facilities. And so the traditional birth attendants would serve as midwives. But if they're not trained, there are many issues if something goes wrong in delivery, and many health and sanitation issues that go along with that. There were many women dying.
Dying, sure.
And so they've now made a law. There's a new woman president of Malawi, Mrs. Joyce Banda, new this year. And she has a real focus on maternal child health. And that's been wonderful. So the concept that she's really brought forth since the traditional birth attendants have basically been outlawed, women still have to get to the health facilities.
Sure.
And if you've had a child, you know the timing of that is not always exact.
Right.
And so how do these women know when to leave their village? They still have to walk these long distances. And then where are they going to stay if they're just waiting to be in labor? And so the idea is to build facilities that are called waiting shelters, where up to 20 women can stay.
Wow.
And have access to sanitation facilities, have access to clean water, maybe a cooking stove, and then when their time comes for delivery, they're close to a health center. And so the unique idea that Mr. Banda has, and I think it's wonderful, is that point in a woman's life really a wonderful time to also conduct hygiene training,
Sure.
to talk about the importance of hygiene and sanitation, hand washing. We're talking about basic hygiene
sure.
Knowledge. Is that just a really ripe time for women to learn those things, so that they can then take that knowledge back to their communities, care for their new baby, and pass that on to their families.
Heidi, I know there is an event coming up here in the Denver area, a couple of events actually. Tell us about those quickly.
So just this week, we have on the 25th, Thursday evening, we're working with the Corbell School of International Studies at DU. Their Center on Rights Development is having Freshwater Project International. Amy Hart, the director of the film, and Charles will be speaking about the girls' right to education and what are some of the barriers to education for girls. Our perspective being that sanitation and hygiene and water issues is one of those. So we'll be showing the film Water First, Reaching the Millennium Development Goals. That information's on our website. It's a free event from 5 to 9 on Thursday evening, the 25th of October.
And that's at FreshWater INTL. That's FreshWaterINTL.org. Or to learn more directly about Freshwater Malawi, go to freshwatermalawi.org. And to actually purchase the film or to understand how you could go about doing personal screenings or community screenings, go to waterfirstfilm.org. Charles, I have to thank you so much for the amazing work you're doing for the world's community and the community of Malawians that are there in your country. They have to be so proud of you, and I'm so honored to know you. Thank you for being with us.
You are welcome, madam.
And Heidi, as always, it's so much fun
Jan.
getting together. Thank you for everything you do in our communities.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us on Driving Force Radio.